Hey friends, you probably clicked on this thumbnail because you love to fish or just getting started in fishing and quickly realize the cost of it is going to get in the way of life. No worries. Here are a few tips that you can apply to all types of fishing that'll get you on the water a little more affordably and help you have a healthy relationship with those in your life. Alright, the first tip I want to share with you is always have a plan when you're going to the tackle shop to buy whatever you need. Alright, so that means it kind of looks like this in my daily life. So I'm here in the Northeast. Right now it's the fall. I'm mostly doing tog fishing. So when I go to Lucky's, my local bait and tackle shop, I think on my way there, what am I not going to buy? Right? There's also albies running. I have plenty of jigs and spoons for albies and the stripers that are running right now as well. The only thing that I might need is tog jigs because, well, sometimes I suck and I lose a lot of tog jigs in the structure. So I'll have that in mind. I'll have a plan before I get there. Trust me, there's been plenty of times when I get there or anywhere, Bass Pro Shops, even Walmart, where I go in the fishing section and I don't have a plan and I walk out with $80 to $100 worth of stuff that probably is still sitting on a shelf somewhere and I barely touch it. So have a plan, know what you need. That's like the number one simplest tip. If you're just starting out, that means doing some research. If you're into freshwater fishing for bass, know what working on your local lakes. I know when I first started bass fishing when I was younger, that's like all I did. I bought a lot of, well, I was young, so I bought a lot of that clickbaity stuff, the stuff on infomercials. Barely use it. I could probably still find them in my tackle box with the hook guards on. You learn what works. Use your time on the water to guide what you have and buy at the store. All right. So my first tip was kind of the all-encompassing tip. Have a plan, know what you want to buy, and buy it. This works. The second tip works for tackle. It works for rods. But you don't want to. My second tip is don't fall into the niche gear. So don't buy gear that is so targeted that it's only good for one thing. Or probably more specifically is don't buy gear that you don't plan on using for multiple purposes. I'm going to show you a couple things here. This here is my Tsunami Classic series with a Quantum Accuracy reel. Okay? This is like the John Skinner specific, if you're into saltwater fishing, you know what I'm talking about, rig that kind of got the whole thing started with bucktail jigging for fluke. When I first saw that these videos were coming out, I was like, man, I never really got buying specific gear for specific things. But when I picked up this rod, I realized that he was trying to sell it for, his intended purpose. But rods are generally multi-purpose anyways. When I picked this thing up for the first time, I was like, man, this feels just like a typical crankbait rod. Or actually, more specifically, I was picturing throwing this into lily pads for bass with jigs, a nice jigging rod. Super multi-purpose though. I've used this for blackfish, I've used this jigging for fluke, and I've used this freshwater fishing. I also make a really great Northern Lakes pike rod. So really, really think about purchases before you make them. It'll save you from buying 4 or 5 rods. This alone is a cheap setup, or fairly cheap. $50 for the reel, for the rod, and I believe the Accuracy goes for $99 retail. So under $150 for, or about $150 after tax for a combo is not bad. We'll be bringing this rod up in our next point, but right now I want to show you that you don't always need expensive gear to have multi-purpose gear. This is an ugly stick. You probably knew what this was right when I picked it up. This tip is famous. But these rods are indestructible, okay? And they really are good all-around equipment. I've used this rod here. As you can see, I've got a trolling tube on it right now. Again, I'm a Northeast fisherman, but I've done fishing of all types. I've trolled with it. I bottom fish with it. This has caught plenty of blackfish this year. Fluke, sea bass, stripers, and bluefish all this year on this rod. I'll even throw this for albies if I got the right stuff on it. The thing that makes these so versatile is that their strength, and they've got a decent backbone. They're not as light as some of the more expensive rods, but these are great combos when you're first starting out. Pair them with the right reel for the situation, and you can buy one rod, maybe 2 reels, and do all types of fishing that you could possibly do with it. So keep that in mind. Like I said, don't buy specific stuff. Buy stuff with what's in mind, okay? This rod here is a 7-foot Tsunami 5-star with a Penn Spin Fisher. This is a 7-foot medium heavy. It's a little heavy rod for a lot of the bottom fishing we do, but it's got really good sensitivity. But the thing that makes this versatile is the 7-foot. I don't buy a lot of 6-foot rods. You're probably thinking, well, you fish from a boat, you can do whatever you want. I like the 7-foot rods because I can use them from surf, do a lot of surf fishing as well. They cast farther when things are diving around the boat. You can get around the motor, you can get around the bow easier with a 7-foot rod. I prefer the 7-foot rods, and again, it makes it more versatile. That's what's gonna drop, having to buy more rods, is buy things, think about it, make a plan, and buy things that are gonna tackle whatever you need to do. The next tip that I wanna share with you guys is actually probably the most important tip. That's why I'm saving it for last. And this is, don't be cheap. Okay, you're probably thinking, well, fishing affordable, isn't the whole point of this is making fishing cheaper? There's a difference between having things affordable and effective and just flat out cheap and useless. I want to show you this rod right here. Look at this. This reel is probably from the 50s. It's a Mitchell. This reel doesn't even have any bearings in it. It is complete mechanical reel. It is the most unsmooth reel I have ever seen. I like to take apart reels for fun, and I do my own service on all my stuff. And this thing is so simple that it's too simple. It's not a smooth reel, not a good reel. Why am I showing this to you? Well, this is the epitome of trying to be too cheap. My dad was really struggling blackfishing. He knew he needed a lighter rig, and I told him, I was like, don't worry, I'll get you something. Don't worry. But he's like, no, I got something. This is what he showed up with the next week. He said, oh, we've been losing all these fish. So he tied on a black leader, direct to the jig. This rod has no action. It's just straight up noodle. No sensitivity. Dulled even more by the steel wire. He was getting picked. So if you're not familiar with blackfish fishing in the Northeast, we use crabs. The real fad right now is jig. And blackfish and tautog are blackfish, also known as tautog, are really notorious bait stealers. So he would come up with no crab every time. He wasn't even feel hits. You wouldn't even see it on the rod. The rod wouldn't even move. That's a combination of the cheap line that he has on. This is old Squidder line, and the shark the shark leader that he had on here, and this very insensitive blank of a rod. So that's an example of where being cheap. Yeah, he saved $100 buying a cheap blackfish or a cheap multi-purpose rig, and it cost him in the long run. I wound up making him switch to some of my rods, and he wound up catching a couple The next trip I bought him a new setup and he high hooked me. So it's just perfect evidence that being cheap is not the way to go. One other thing I want to share with you is I told you that I'd bring this up. This is an Okuma reel. This is not, I'm trying to think of the name of it. This is the Okuma Avenger. Okay, you can get these on Amazon for, I believe, $50. I'll throw up a screenshot of that right now as I'm talking. So you can get these for around $50. This is the Okuma 55 size reel. And I'm all about trying to find affordable ways to keep fishing. So I got this reel. I regret it. I actually really regret it. I'd rather spend a little more on a reel than, especially if you're fishing for big fish, but I'd rather spend a little more on a reel than have to worry about it breaking mid-fight. I'm gonna put the reel up to the camera right now and just see the reel seat of this. I don't know if you can see that in the footage. If you can, I'll try my best to get good footage of it and put it in over this voice over here. But it flexes like no tomorrow. Break your things. That being said, the inner workings of this reel is incredible. It's got a bait switch feature. And I'm gonna use it till it breaks. And who knows, that might ever be, because I'll probably baby it. But it's been a really good reel, other than the flex in this. When most of this year I've spent fishing for stripers and bluefish, big fish. And every time I've been into like a 28, 30 inch bluefish or a big bass, I feel this thing give. And I know it doesn't have much more in it. So this might be perfect reel for you if you're a cat fisherman and need the big size reel with a big line. But they don't pull as hard. They're not as aggressive type fish. You might be okay with this. I don't recommend it. I'd still probably go with something the next step up. Not all Okuma reels have that flex problem, but at this price point, most reels will. So don't be cheap kind of also applies to buying reels. I would really aim for a slightly higher class reel and go with more an economy style rod. Again, you're saving money by multi-purposing your gear, and you want to be able to enjoy it. You're not enjoying it if you snap this on a 50-pound fish. You're not gonna enjoy that very much. So go ahead and spend a little extra money. Don't buy more gear than you need. You're gonna save money in the long run. All right, so this last tip I want to share with you guys is don't buy gadgets to replace skills. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Again, I've been using the blackfish example a lot because that's what season we're in right now up here. But this can be applied to a lot of different things. So blackfishing, the goal is to get over structure, rocks, pilings, bridges. But the rocks are the hardest. You don't see them. You got to use your, fish finder to find them. You've got to anchor over them, and there is tons of products out there to make that easier. There's trolling motors with spot lock. There's side scan imaging trolling motors. But in my opinion, the use of those things dull your skills as a fisherman. The ability to anchor over a rock is something that's going to separate you from a good to bad fisherman. And you're only going to get good at it by taking your time and doing it, getting frustrated, going off the rock, messing up. And same can be for anything. I see all these tournament bass guys use all these crazy side scan imaging, the 360 view fish finders, and oh, look at that, like being able to see a stick under the water. All that replaces is just casting, fan casting, knowing how to cover water. That's all that it does. If you're fishing your bait effectively and covering water, you shouldn't need to know where the fish are before you make a cast. That simple. Another thing is, I remember from bass fishing, I remember being a young kid being really into bass fishing, and Jimmy Houston had his color spectrometer or something like that. If I can find it, I'll put a picture over this voice here. Color something. And it was to tell you what color's the best. And as a kid, I thought I really needed this to catch more fish. And the more I watched his videos, and the more I looked into it, I forget how much it was. It was a lot for a kid. And the more I realized the patterns that it showed you were the exact same patterns that you all know about. The, chartreuse, or sometimes darker colors on muddy water, not using too bright of patterns on bright days, is all stuff you already know. So you don't need gadgets to replace skills that you should already have. Your time on the water, being able to be, not having to spend your time working to make the money to get that stuff, will get you on the water more. The not spending the money, and will maybe get you a little more favor with your loved ones to get on the water a little more. All right, one more tip, how to make fishing a little affordable. This one's kind of a joke, but not. Is if you've got a girlfriend, a wife, family, get them into fishing. Now, how does that make it more affordable? Well, you can use their gear. It's an excuse to buy more gear, but also it makes it more fun. So get your family involved. Get your girlfriend involved. I used to be a loner when it came to fishing, but my wife's been spending a lot more time on the water with me this year, and it's been awesome. So give that a whirl too.